The grand capital city of the Antares Empire, Reppenheim, is shown amidst chaos and destruction. A massive, monstrous beast roars loudly, surrounded by fire and devastation. The terrifying beast continues its rampage, trampling over soldiers in the city. More scenes show the enormous creature unleashing its power over the burning landscape. The battle rages on in the city, with armored soldiers bravely facing off against dark figures and monsters. A solemn figure on a horse speaks, recounting the terrible losses: 2 million troops lost to a summoned evil beast, with 200,000 killed and 300,000 injured by wide-area magic. Despite the tragedy, the speaker declares that this is the end for the demon king who poisoned the world with evil, proclaiming that true warriors will purge him. All this success against the darkness is credited to the wisdom of His Majesty Karsus. The scene shifts to the interior of the Great Demon Castle, specifically the Temple of Abyss, a place of grand dark architecture. Hero Alex von Halen appears, filled with determination, proclaiming that the Demon King's evil deeds end now. Alex addresses the figure on the throne, telling the evil king it is time to return to darkness, while his allies stand ready behind him. The focus moves to the seated figure, who is identified as the Demon King Leafenheart, Emperor of Antares. Alex declares his intent to destroy Leafenheart and end the history of the Empire of Darkness. A heavily armored man, sword lodestar Cyrus, readies his lightning-charged sword, preparing for the fight. Leafenheart speaks calmly, saying it is unfair because he built the empire with great effort, questioning why they call it an Empire of Darkness instead of the noble name Antares. Cyrus retorts that the Empire of Darkness is raising beasts and that if Leafenheart is gone, the devilish nature of those monsters will disappear too. The Fist King Tesseron steps up, roaring that the devilish nature is nonsense, as those creatures were always like that. Leafenheart only taught them human tactics. Leafenheart reflects that the humans suffered one-sided losses and are now complaining about corruption from using tactics that humans have always used. Leafenheart then asks in surprise if all of his 4 heavenly kings have fallen. Cyrus confirms the death of the brave orc warrior Tacid, saying the orc was no match for his sword. Leafenheart cries out in shock, asking if the great orc warrior Tacid is truly dead. Leafenheart defends the orcs, saying that though they look savage, they are an innocent tribe that protects the weak and fights the strong, yet they are being treated like monsters, even if they are a bit dirty from not washing. He continues, lamenting the loss of the orc, the troll Guru Adolka, and referring to the others as the 4 heavenly kings. Leafenheart argues that trolls only look scary, but are a primitive tribe thankful to nature, showing an image of a happy troll surrounded by small birds. Saintess Ellen appears, stating that the evil dwarf who served the god of darkness has also returned to the original flow. Leafenheart notes that even Makelin has died, referring to the saintess. Leafenheart questions the arrogance of calling any god other than the main deity Sayer and the 12 gods as evil beings, mentioning Alfort, the god of dwarves. Mage of Light Jade Arclight boasts that even the corrupt Dark Elf series was sent to the underworld because she was no match for his magic. Leafenheart reacts intensely to the mention of Ceres, his face contorted in anger. Leafenheart, enveloped in dark purple energy, screams, asking if they really want to die. Alex shouts that Leafenheart is finally showing his true colors, calling the Dark Elf a corrupted beast, and stating there is no room for sympathy. Leafenheart counters by recalling how the Dark Elf, who had slightly darker skin, was driven out into the wasteland after humans cut down her forest and forced her to live under the sun. He fiercely asks if they are going to pure blood high elf, a dark elf just because you got a little tan, while Alex and the others prepare to fight. Alex vows to appease the dead souls with his sword, as Leafenheart realizes talking is useless. Leafenheart, with glowing eyes, asks who will appease the vengeful spirits of the different races if he doesn't. Alex calls Leafenheart abominable, saying that without his evil power, the beasts wouldn't have been corrupted and could have lived according to their duty. Leafenheart concludes that conversation is useless because, to the humans, the other tribes are just dark races that escaped slavery and are evil beings that must be killed. The narration states that to the humans, the other tribes were seen as less than intelligent beings. Leafenheart declares that in that case he will become the Demon King as they wish, channeling immense dark power. He fully embraces the title, appearing powerful in his dark magic. Leafenheart engages the heroes in combat, scattering them with his power. He pauses, tears in his eyes, stating his name is Leafenheart. He reveals that he was just an ordinary archmage before all this, showing a massive magic circle forming around him. The magic circle glows intensely as Leafenheart recalls his past. Leafenheart explains how humans see elves as servants, dwarves as digging slaves, and orcs as strong servants. Trolls were seen as ingredients for potions, all of them slaves who lost their self-respect and pride. He recalls his shock at discovering the secret hidden in their forgotten culture while standing over ruins with a magic circle. He met them, learned their culture, and he, who combined elf elemental magic with troll magic, used 10th circle magic for the first time. Leafenheart continues that after the exchange and change in values, he started rescuing the races being treated like slaves. However, as his land grew by accepting them, it became hard to hide, and humans invaded with knights carrying spears and swords. The invasion was continuous, smashing and emptying their lands, leading to the birth of the Antares Empire. Leafenheart insists he only retaliated because he was attacked, and he did not hate humans, only believing all intelligence is equal. He shows the result of this conflict, the destruction of his city, and the death of his people and comrades. The allied heroes cheer their supposed victory against the demon king Leafenheart. Leafenheart states that the humans insisted the words of his people were due to the demon king's evil magic, even as they lay dying. He points out that the armed forces were full of ugly races like ogres and goblins, implying that is how the humans saw them. Leafenheart exclaims that killing his poor people and comrades for such reasons makes no sense, as he, as a king, has a duty to protect his country. He then challenges Alex, saying the hero title was just because he was proficient with sword and magic, but he failed to master either, calling him a miscellaneous bastard. He notes that in stories, the warrior survives, but in reality, the one who focuses on one thing prospers, which is the Fist King Tesseron. Leafenheart says the others might be manageable, but Tesseron is different. He is the true master of focusing on one thing. Tesseron bursts out in fire, preparing to attack Leafenheart, who is now consumed by dark energy. The heroes cry out to stop him, but Leafenheart, with tears in his eyes, reflects that in heroic tales the warrior survives, but in reality, the specialist thrives. Leafenheart declares that only the one with the strongest body and endurance remains, showing Tesseron radiating intense golden light. He reiterates that Tesseron is the one who dug a single well, suggesting his focused power is hard to overcome. Tesseron charges at Leafenheart with incredible force, surrounded by flames. Leafenheart, engulfed in the light of Tesseron's attack, realizes that taking him down won't be easy. The Fist King's powerful attack explodes outwards. Leafenheart is seen recoiling from the massive impact. Leafenheart, recovering slightly, is seen moving away as Tesseron's attack shakes the area. Leafenheart's intense eyes show he is still determined, while Tesseron prepares another massive punch. Leafenheart screams that he cannot die like this, surrounded by the energy of the impending final blow. The impact is immense, shaking everything around them. Tesseron yells that it is their victory, Demon King Leafenheart, questioning if living as slaves is their true self. Leafenheart is in disbelief, questioning if they really think living as slaves is their true nature, stating he cannot give up. Leafenheart pulls out a magical tool found in an ancient ruin, the Eye of Space and Time. He explains it's an artifact with powerful magic, even for a 10th circle mage like him, that he couldn't decipher. Tesseron yells out, asking what Leafenheart is trying to do. Leafenheart reveals it is a space-time return spell, magic that rewinds the caster's time and shakes up God's province, admitting he has to try it regardless of success. Leafenheart begins activating the spell, summoning powerful energy as Tesseron yells for him to stop. Tesseron attacks again with a ground-shattering punch, but Leafenheart focuses on the artifact. Leafenheart closes his eyes, engulfed in a swirling light, thinking, "I can't die." He cries out that he cannot die like this as the massive energy engulfs him. Tesseron's final blow seems to connect with overwhelming force. The brilliant light of the spell activation overwhelms the scene of the attack. Leafenheart is completely consumed by the powerful light of the spell. A bright, blinding light explodes, signifying a major temporal shift. The light fades, showing a swirling vortex of energy where the battle took place. Intense white light dominates the screen, suggesting a complete reset or jaunt. The scene changes to a quiet, peaceful forest with a small bird chirping on a branch. The perspective shows a cozy, wooden log cabin in a sunny, green setting. Inside, soft sunlight filters through white curtains and the waking person feels a sound, warmth, and coziness. A person's eye opens, with a golden tint, wondering if they are still alive and if the space-time return spell worked despite not fully understanding it. The muscular man wakes up in bed, realizing he thinks he did a time leap and questioning where he is, wondering if this place was in his past. He looks around the unfamiliar, bright room, wondering about his current age. The muscular man looks intensely shocked as he fully wakes up. The story begins outside a big wooden house, suggesting a secluded place of living. A character wakes up, noticing his bare feet and a very muscular body, realizing something is very different with his physique. He looks shocked, wondering who this person in front of him is as he doesn't recognize the situation. He examines his new body, noting the roughness and calluses, questioning why a wizard like himself needs such a muscular build with six-pack abs. The character recalls his past where he used to seduce many women with his charm, even when he was older, making some elves cry. But now, he looks in the mirror and wonders about his suddenly sculpted face and buff body, asking if something went wrong with his plan. He fears his regression failed and he is in the wrong person's body, wondering if he's still in the same time but just in a different body, while a serious-looking woman stares at him with a familiar look. He notices the dark brown, tough-looking eyes and a stubbornly closed mouth of this new body, observing its features closely. He thinks that if this body was bigger and had a beard, it would look exactly like the Fist King. Suddenly, a booming voice calls out to him as Tesseron, you punk, and an older, very muscular man appears, seeming very angry. The angry man points out that the sun is already high in the sky. He yells at Tesseron for not being outside yet, demanding action with joy. The older man looms over the character, full of energy, ready to start the day. The character, completely confused by the giant man, stammers, who are you? And calls the imposing figure a monster. The big man finds it funny that he looks like he is seeing him for the first time, but the character insists he really doesn't know who he is. The older man scolds him, mentioning that he already used the excuse of losing his memory twice before, and it won't work again. The older man grabs the character and immediately declares they should go to the training grounds, making the character panic about training. The character realizes that judging by the situation, this huge man must be Tesseron's master. He recognizes the imposing figure as the continent's strongest martial artist, the Fist King, Gerald Crom Proteas, or rather, the former Fist King. Even though he's tied up, the character yells at the old man to please listen to him first. Gerald ignores him, saying he's been talking too much and it's time to start the training. Character is tied to a tree, clearly terrified, as Gerald brings down a large bamboo stick to begin the punishment. The character is hit hard, letting out a muffled scream, and his face strains under the force. The impact is incredibly powerful, sending shockwaves of energy and making the character barely hold on. He is drenched in sweat and possibly saliva from the gag, wondering what the heck is going on as he endures the relentless blows. Another massive strike lands, shaking the surroundings. Character thinks this is how he's going to die, seeing a sad memory flash before his eyes. The onlookers, including a long-haired woman, notice the master seems softer today and wonder if he really lost his memories. One observer reasons that even if he lost short-term memory, the harsh and simple nature of their training at the Unbreakable Gym wouldn't be a problem. Another person mentions they have forgotten memories too, suggesting it's not a big deal because the solution is simple. The thought is that everything will heal even if memories are lost, as Gerald continues to strike the tied-up Tesseron. Tesseron cries out for help, but Gerald forcefully preaches that humans use weapons because they are weak and dependent. Gerald yells that relying on equipment is stupid and is the dishonesty of someone who can't overcome their weakness, demanding a warrior must train and overcome weaknesses. Gerald declares it's the first time he has seen such a simple and ignorant accident in his 50 years of existence, comparing humans to iron that gets stronger when struck. He swings his sticks menacingly, asking what kind of human is like iron, but then tells Tesseron, "You are my chosen disciple." Gerald assures him that his body has no limits and he can become steel, as he raises his stick for a final powerful strike. As the blow connects, Gerald explains to Tesseron that not everyone gets strong just by training. Like iron becoming steel, there is a quality needed to make the body stronger, and they met for that reason. He urges Tesseron to think about the ocean, which takes everything but doesn't change, telling him to bring out the ocean inside him. The character is in disbelief at the nonsense, as Gerald unleashes another massive wave of force that pushes everything away. While thinking what nonsense is that, the character sees faint images of a sea scene with a woman, making him whisper "sea ocean" through his gag. Gerald stops the training, telling him to rest, and the character is relieved he didn't die from the brutal hits. Now untied, the character lies on the ground, thanking the old man for being tough and much appreciated. Later, under a dark, starry sky, the character thinks to himself, "Oh my." He sees petals floating in a healing liquid, recognizing them as Geraldly herb petals and wondering if it's a healing potion that costs 10 silver coins per bottle to fill a bathtub with. He realizes this is far more luxurious than a queen bathing in milk, and asks what kind of medicine bath this is, looking at Gerald. Gerald explains it is what he needs to cool down, adding that after training his muscles to the point of near death, his power and the recovery potion let him heal quickly, getting stronger from the injuries. The character realizes this isn't some baseless training. As Gerald mentions, he fought Tesseron before and knows how tough his body is, implying Tesseron has been doing this since he was young. The character is soaking, letting out a sigh of relief, confirming to himself that he definitely went back in time. He looks out the window at the moonlit night while still in the bath, then wonders what happened to the original him in this timeline. He then questions if there is also a young version of Leaf and Heart existing around, looking at the image of the woman from before. He ponders if two identical souls can exist in one timeline and states that if so, he has two hypotheses. His first hypothesis is that his future self is inside Tesseron's body, and the current Leaf and Heart is the young version of himself. The second hypothesis is that the one inside the body of young Leaf and Heart is the soul of the Fist King, Gerald's soul. The scene shifts to a young woman, presumably Leaf and Heart, carrying a large stack of books, looking composed in a scholarly setting. The training master tells his disciple to eat everything to refill his tired body with nutrients. Then, right after eating, the master suggests a light jog, making the disciple groan. The disciple is seen struggling to keep up while carrying a huge weight on his back as the master joyfully runs ahead. The master asks if the disciple is already feeling tired and suggests sticking to the morning's training routine instead. The disciple screams in protest as he is forced to continue the ridiculously hard training. Lying in bed, exhausted, the disciple wonders how long he has to endure this crazy training method. He recalls how he was completely focused on Tesseron before, and now he worries about what will happen to him going forward. The disciple starts thinking about what would happen if his current self met his past self, wondering if their souls would merge. He then hears a thought that each person's soul has unique world laws, and in bad situations, a soul might even disappear. He recalls that in 10 years, the young Leaf and Heart will start his magician journey and will be busy reading at the Magic Tower of Delphia, so they shouldn't meet. However, he worries about what happens if Tesseron takes over his body, as Tesseron would surely come after him. Tesseron gets his power from the strong body he built using the Gym Unbreakable training method, meaning the current frail body wouldn't stand a chance against him. The disciple notes that the Gym Unbreakable training method needs a knowledgeable master to help, but then thinks that with Tesseron's strength level, he might find a way. The disciple decides he needs to escape this living hell tonight, no matter what, only to be confronted by his master lurking nearby. The master comments on how well-behaved the disciple has been for months, assuming he gave up, but now sees he is planning another escape. The master asks if this is the disciple's 9th attempt. The disciple tries to tell the master the truth. He is not the Tesseron the master knows, and his name is Repenheart, a magician. The master laughs, saying that's the theme this time, reminding the disciple of his previous outlandish claims, like being from another world or meeting dragons and gods. The master recalls the disciple claiming to be a reincarnated Muram master from the Huan dynasty last time, adding that this story at least makes sense, suggesting improvement. He then tells the disciple to go back inside and sleep. Despite failing the escape attempt tonight, the disciple vows to try escaping again tomorrow. The disciple admits his prison break attempt failed this time but warns the master not to think he will stay there any longer. The master says he already tried all that when he was the disciple's age, and the man once known as the Demon King has finally given up escaping efforts. The narration explains that the disciple decides it is more realistic to gain the master's recognition and leave with his approval, and with overflowing love and hell. 2 years pass, and the master congratulates the disciple for finally awakening his aura. The disciple confirms he succeeded in awakening his aura and notes how fast it is, realizing he awakened it before age 20, unlike the famous swordsman Cyrus who awakened his aura in his late 20s. The master asks why the disciple is so surprised, stating it is natural with the Gym Unbreakable training method. The master explains that as the body trains alongside the will to survive, the will to survive becomes life force, which manifests as aura, and asks if it doesn't hurt much anymore. He then says it is time to move to the next step and learn some skills. The disciple asks if they are finally going to learn skills normally, and then asks if he can leave soon if he masters them. The master asks what kind of training he has in mind. The master erupts with immense power and demands a freestyle duel. The disciple is completely shocked by the master's intensity, letting out a cry of pain as he is violently thrown back. Another 3 years pass. The setting shifts to the south of the Basili Kingdom, in a rugged area of the Raked mountain range. The disciple is training under a powerful waterfall, trying to surpass the current level of his technique, Calamity Horn. Calamity Horn is described as a technique that concentrates energy from the entire body into a single point, named for how energy accumulates like a horn. The disciple needs to reach level 4. Maximum level for Calamity Horn is level 4, and at 9 layers of energy accumulated, a single blow can vanquish a god. However, the limit the disciple knew for test run was only level 7, and even Master Gerald only reached level 8. The disciple is determined to reach level 4 because Master agreed to grant him approval to leave once he reaches that level. He thinks his master is probably enjoying a drink in the village below since it has been a while. The disciple considers that if it were in the past, he would have used this opportunity to escape, but now he decides to call it a day with his training. He recalls a spell, Del Fearless Starin, and commands it to be his void bullet to strike his enemy, realizing this body cannot withstand it. Yet, he still remembers the magical knowledge from the artificial light. He wonders if he can regain his prowess as a magician in Tesseron's brainless body, despite having zero knowledge of magic and calculation. Suddenly, he senses a presence that does not feel human. The disciple tells the approaching presence to pretend it hasn't seen him. He notices a figure lying on the ground that looks like a snapped chain, and then sees a large, muscular creature stepping out from the woods. The creature is an orc armed with a sword, looking very powerful. The disciple wonders aloud if the being is an orc. The orc angrily shouts at the disciple, calling him human, and ordering him to pretend he didn't see him, threatening to kill him otherwise. The strong man saw the other person and immediately knew he was an orc, thinking the orc looked to be about 3 or 4 years old based on size. The orc seemed scared and tried to talk, warning the human not to kill him if he pretended not to see him. The human noticed the orc was trying to talk because he hadn't been hostile, which the human thought was typical of the noble race that avoids killing without need. The human asked the young orc if someone was chasing him, which surprised the orc, who wondered how a human could speak the language of grace. The orc replied that he had an encounter, calling it a blessed one, and confirmed that he was indeed being pursued. The human then offered to help the orc and asked if the orc could trust him, standing confidently at the entrance of his hideout. The orc acknowledged the human spoke the words of grace and felt like a brother, sensing the sincere goodwill, but worried that helping him would put the human in danger too. The human's intelligent tone made the orc wonder if he was from a high bloodline orc family, but the human insisted he had the ability to help and asked the orc to believe him. The human then began channeling a strong, glowing purple energy all around his body. He used this magic to create a glowing portal or hiding spot within the cave entrance, telling the orc his magic would hide him. The orc, now looking closer at the glowing power, asked if the human was a mage, and the human, slightly puzzled, asked if it was strange for someone with his body to be a mage. The orc accepted the favor with thanks, and the human just thought about the trouble of dealing with all this just to earn a few silver coins. The human suddenly seemed bothered, thinking about how much hassle this was just for some small money. He remembered the conversation about the gold coin, realizing they only needed the information and could pretend they never asked, while the orc's pursuers were seen walking up the path. The group of pursuers, looking like rough soldiers, angrily asked the human if he had seen an orc kid go by, offering a gold coin for information. The human, still standing above them, overheard the offer and then heard his own thoughts questioning the gold coin offer, deciding they should just listen and then deny everything. The human pretended not to know what they were talking about, while the lead soldier pointed out fresh orc footprints. The leader confirmed the footprints led that way and urged his men to follow, but the human mentally noted that novice spells couldn't really erase footprints. The human declared the cave was his dwelling and he wouldn't let them enter, which made the leader yell in disbelief, calling the human a mere mountain-living whelp. The leader's subordinate nervously pointed out that the human didn't look ordinary, even though there were more than 10 of them, but the leader dismissed the fear and told the human to move aside. The leader commented on the human's amazing body, but then decided he was still just a kid. The human seemed to recall advice from a master that his fist itself was a weapon that could kill most guys just by swinging it. The human then asked his master what he should do, and the advice was to show mercy to those weaker than himself, while the human held a staff-like object. The teaching continued, explaining that for someone whose bare fist is stronger than a weapon, wielding a weapon is an act of mercy. The human reassured someone, presumably the orc, not to worry, as they wouldn't die if hit by the weapon, showing a fierce expression while gripping the club. It was explained that Gym Unbreakable was a martial school focused only on unarmed combat, though they did have weapon techniques. The thugs below challenged the human, asking if he wanted to fight and if he thought he was so tough. One of the pursuers shouted in pain as the fight began, with the orc's allies getting thrown around by the sheer force. The human attacked with great speed and power, showing off his incredible strength. The remaining thugs yelled in panic, charging together, but the narration explained that the purpose of their only weapon technique, the staff arts, wasn't for fighting. Instead, the staff arts were a technique meant solely for rigorously beating up their disciples, specializing in evenly beating the opponent's body. Crucially, this technique had no defensive moves. It was pure offense, as seen when one man tried to stab the human with a sword. The attacker was shocked that his sword didn't work against the human's body, and the human mentally remarked that even a sword was useless, thinking his own body felt too tough. It was highlighted that the great thing about the staff art was that the opponent would never die, even if their joints broke or bones were crushed. The human continued to easily beat up the men, assuring them, despite the violent hits, "Don't worry, you won't die." The narration emphasized that even with broken joints and crushed bones, they wouldn't die from this technique. The thugs were left completely beaten, groaning for help, while the human stood over them, looking unbothered. One of the remaining thugs, in pain, demanded the human state his name. The human taunted him, saying he hadn't learned his lesson yet, pointing out that all his friends were in a sorry state and he was the only one left to ask. The last thug screamed in terror and begged for mercy, but the human simply told him to get lost, and the orc they were chasing thanked him warmly. The human then expressed that it was a shame because beating them up was sort of fun, and wondered if he should get a disciple later just to beat them up. It was noted that the orc was unknowingly already stained with the beliefs of Jim Unbreakable, as the orc profusely thanked his savior. The orc vowed never to forget that day until his life ended and promised to repay the kindness shown to him. The orc questioned if it was right for a warrior to bow his head so easily, but then declared that the human had saved him and opened a new path for him. The orc announced that the human was now his mentor, and he would wield his sword for him when needed, explaining that in orc culture, a mentor is a respected life leader, like a knight swearing loyalty to a liege. The orc asked for the human's name, and as he began to state his own name, the human smiled, ready to introduce himself. The human then stated his full name, Leafenhart Wald Anters. The orc looked up at the shining man and confirmed he would not forget that name. The orc repeated the name, Leafenhart Wald Anters, and the human replied that he would surely not forget it. The human then asked the orc about his destination, noting that the world mostly belonged to humans, and asked where the orc was heading, hoping for a place for him to rest. The orc said even if there isn't a place, he would choose to wander and die rather than live as a slave, and the human directed him past the ragged mountain ranges towards a nameless wilderness half a month away, called the Land of Trials by his race. The human mentioned hearing about orcs hiding there, specifically the blue bear tribe that lives in that area. The orc decided to leave, saying farewell, and as he started to walk away, the human quickly asked for his name. The orc proudly announced, "I am the son of Crota and the heir to the axe of Lart. I am Tacit." The human reacted with a simple huh? After hearing the name, the human then realized that this orc was Tacit, a legendary figure. It was explained that the Grey Orc warrior, Tacit, was one of the 4 heavenly kings. Tacit was the chieftain of the Blue Bear tribe and eventually rose to become a great orc chieftain. Someone wondered if Tesron had met young Tacit. Considering his personality, they doubted he would have helped an orc, concluding that fate must have mixed things up somehow. The human chuckled, calling it a strange fate, while looking out over a vast landscape where the orc was just a small figure in the distance. A close-up showed the human smiling contentedly, bathed in a warm, golden light. The scene suddenly shifted to a grand, imposing structure under a bright blue sky, with various orcs and other figures raising their fists in what looked like a celebration or allegiance. The view then focused on a massive, fearsome orc wearing a skull mask, looking powerful. Next, a figure with blue skin, long tusks, and white robes stood looking regal. Then, an elegant female figure with long white hair and distinct pointed ears, possibly an elf, was shown. An ancient-looking man with a long white beard appeared next, followed by a figure in red robes looking on with a smile. The figure in red robes seemed to be addressing someone, saying, "Let's meet again someday." Finally, a grand, glowing tree structure was shown behind a gathering of powerful figures, where one figure was addressed as my friend, another as my brother, and the young orc was identified as the heir of a gallant warrior. 6 months passed after the strange meeting with Tacit. Now, the master is testing his disciple with a powerful move. The master unleashed a massive, fiery punch, showing immense power in this training session. This attack, called the Kai's Striking Blast, was incredibly strong, radiating intense golden light. The disciple reacted with surprise, shouting that his master was going too far with the training intensity. He quickly put up a defense, calling out his move, the spiral guard, to block the incoming blast. The master's attack finally hit, causing a huge explosion of energy around the disciple. The master's protective technique held strong, and he proudly announced that the disciple's spiral guard had reached its peak. The master then started reminiscing about 6 years ago when the disciple used to argue about his identity, blaming his injuries on getting beaten up so much. The disciple, now much stronger, reminded his master that he has been teaching him for 10 whole years, and while he improved a lot, the master still seemed unsatisfied. The master asked why the disciple was still so small, which confused the disciple since he was already over 190 cm tall. The master dismissed his height, stating that a disciple of Jim Unbreakable should be taller than 2 meters, showing silhouettes of past Fist Kings. The master yelled out the names of the past Fist Kings, Valkensuit, Calbrain, and Lastel, emphasizing the lineage expectation. The master then pressed the disciple about strictly following the breathing techniques, making the disciple realize why the Tesseron he met earlier was so tall, about 2.3 meters. The disciple felt his body had its limits, thinking his master wanted him to grow even more, which would make him look like a monster if he pushed the breathing techniques further. The master concluded that even if the disciple was small, his durability was what mattered, and then told him it was time for the final test, shouting begin. The disciple stood ready on the icy ground, glowing with energy, awaiting the final test from his master who stood on a rock above. The disciple prepared himself, his body radiating power as he prepared to strike upwards. He brought his fist down with incredible force, unleashing a technique called the Calamity Horn onto the ice. The force of his fist strike created a massive golden aura centered around his foot, hitting the ground. The power continued to surge upwards from the point of impact, pushing outward with great intensity. The golden energy exploded with great sound effects representing the force of the technique. The disciple successfully executed the level 4 Calamity Horn, creating a huge vertical blast of energy. The golden energy blast was contrasted by a massive wave of blue, icy power erupting from the ground. The disciple was seen standing amidst the shattered ice, having used his new strength to break through the master's defense. The ice shattered completely around the disciple, showing the incredible force of his final technique. Standing on the broken ice, the disciple was admired by his master, who laughed out loud in delight. The master praised his disciple, saying that now he won't get beaten up so easily anymore. The disciple confirmed his success, proudly stating he achieved level 4 Calamity Horn. The master announced that the disciple was now ready to go out into the world, and the disciple looked on with a questioning expression. The master told his disciple, Leafenheart, to live as he wished. He made it clear he didn't care if the disciple became good or evil, only that he lived the life he wanted. The master explained that this freedom was the result of all the training the disciple had done. The disciple, Master Gerald, paused, thinking about the words of the third Fist King, Lastel, from 60 years ago. Master Gerald recalled Lastel telling him to keep 3 things in mind before descending the mountain. The first rule was about wealth. It was okay to collect it, but never take what didn't belong to him. The disciple questioned this, pointing out that the master previously said it was fine to be evil, to which the master replied that if he was going to be evil, he should do it with style and dignity. The disciple found the belief strange, and the master moved to the second point, siding with those who are treated unjustly. The master questioned why one shouldn't support those treated unfairly, arguing that the weak are not always the unjustly treated, and the world is full of people weaker than him. Then the master declared the third and most important point, showing 3 fingers. The third rule was absolute. The martial lineage of Jim Unbreakable must never end. The master commanded the disciple to find a successor and pass on these great teachings, asking if he understood. The disciple agreed to keep the rules in mind, and the master softened, saying it was hard to find a child with potential, but he must not let go of a suitable one if found. The master gave the disciple a heavy bag of coins and some clothes for travel, and the disciple was shocked to see only 30 silver coins. The disciple questioned this small amount, knowing his master was rich and owned a mansion, but the master explained that for their martial school, there was a set fee for descending, and the price increased from the old fee of 25 coins. The master also mentioned arranging a small present for him in the Settle-led Mountains and handed him a map with the location marked. He encouraged the disciple to visit the marked location if he had business nearby. The disciple, now wearing traveling clothes and a cloak, stood atop the snowy peak looking out over the world. He asked his master if it was truly all right for him to leave the mountain and wondered if he was finally free from that place. The disciple looked back as his master began to unleash a tremendous power. The disciple reacted in shock as the power surged, letting out a surprise sound. The disciple cried out in alarm, but his master urged him to go, telling him not to be sad about their farewell. The master, engulfed in golden flames, told him to be steadfast and only look forward. The master emphasized that he was the successor of the greatest teaching in the world, his face fierce and determined. The disciple screamed out as the powerful force of his master's farewell blast pushed him away. The scene shifts to a small village outside the mountains, where people are worriedly talking in front of a large building. An older man, the village chief, told someone that even if the people they are dealing with are nobles, he must speak up. A knight in shining armor then asked what the matter was. The village chief stood before the knight, demanding payment for the food the knights had eaten. The knight, looking down on them, sneered that they were a lowly lot with no honor and tossed down what he claimed was enough payment. The village chief examined the payment, realizing it was a single gold coin, and wondered how peasants would even recognize such a thing, while another villager stammered in fear. The knight was angry that they thought he didn't know the market price, screaming at them for trying to deceive a knight. The knight suddenly attacked the village chief, who cried out in pain and called for the chief. The villagers gathered, angry, realizing the knights were no better than bandits, taking their houses, eating their food, and only paying with one gold coin. They questioned if the knight considered the transportation and workers' fees, as another knight asked what was wrong with Sir Edward. Sir Edward dismissed the issue, referring to the approaching young man as young Master Stefan, and remarked that these people were truly the wicked sort. Stefan, dressed in fine armor, stated that this situation proved why one should never show too much grace to lowly peasants. He finished with a cruel smile, saying that the peasants never seemed to realize their proper place. The man woke up next to someone and asked why she kept touching his body like that. She replied that she liked it, and he wondered what was so special about his small body. She complimented him, saying he looked elegant and sharp like a well-honed blade. He thought about how his body used to be like a blade but now felt more like a terrifying stone golem, apologizing to Cirrus in his reflection. He cheered up a bit, noting that at least he had gotten much taller, while his companions looked on. He looked out the window, thinking that Cirrus would be 70 years old now, which he guessed was about 17 in human years. He identified their current location as Chrome City, in the southern part of the Vasily Kingdom, and figured Cirrus was likely at a slave auction house in the Chatten Kingdom right now since she would be sold next year. He wondered what to do, thinking about destroying the auction house to free Cirrus, but decided against it so as not to mess up his plan to get his magic back. He concluded that using money was probably the best way to handle it, but then remembered that an elf slave was super expensive and he was completely broke. However, he quickly reassured himself, remembering he had a strong body, mastered skills, and knowledge of the future. He recalled hearing about some ruins on the road to the Chatten Kingdom which might offer a solution. He then asked his companion, Wizard Todd, if he had found the ruins yet, while Todd was channeling some power. Todd asked his lord to wait a little longer as he finished his work, showing him as Wizard Todd, an exploration specialist from the Delphia Magic Tower. The knight asked Todd if he was sure about the location. Todd confirmed positively that it was where the great swordsman, Sir Claude von Leoda's Altian, rested. The knight then looked out at the snowy mountains, confirming this was the place where the legendary swordsman was buried. It had been 3 days since he left Chrome City, and he was traveling north along the central road toward the Hatton Mountain Range, feeling the incredible stamina of his current body that kept him warm despite the cold. He remembered hearing that previous kings of fists used to walk around shirtless even in winter, though he wasn't planning on doing that himself. He explained that he used the technique artificial phantasmagoria to recall memories, specifically details about the Hatton Mountains ruins. He recounted that in his past life, he met Wizard Todd at the Delphia Tower, and Todd had explored those ruins with someone from House Altian, but he himself had gone there later and found real artifacts that Todd missed. He cheerfully remembered selling everything for over 2,000 gold coins, a sweet deal indeed. He stepped forward, spotting Cattle Village just as he remembered it. Back in the village meeting, the villagers were discussing what to do since the nobles demanded a guide to the Valley of Death, which they all wanted to avoid. They worried about trouble if they refused, and someone mentioned that even their chief got hurt trying to stand up to the nobles. One villager angrily cursed the nobles, but another hushed him, fearing they might be overheard. A villager named Ted nervously offered to go, claiming he was the best mountain climber and the only one who could make the trip. Ted's wife and child cried, begging him not to go, but the other villagers encouraged him to keep his word. Hearing the cheers, Ted suddenly regretted his decision, while the main character watched with an intense expression. Ted realized with horror that he didn't want to go anymore, but just then, the main character offered to go instead. Ted reacted with extreme shock and terror to the sudden appearance of the imposing figure. The imposing figure said he was just a traveler who accidentally overheard their talk, but Ted questioned the accident of someone sticking their head under his roof. The traveler confirmed he knew the area very well, but Ted warned him about the Valley of Death, saying no man had ever returned from there. The traveler coolly insisted he had been there before and then added that they should consider themselves lucky because he just saved one of their men's lives. The narration explained that the Valley of Death is also known as a dungeon, a remnant from the forgotten Silver Age. It was revealed that 50 years ago, a knight named Claude from House Altian, at the age of 45, had many adventures and became famous throughout the Vasily Kingdom. However, when fame got too big, Claude went into the Valley of Death with just one servant and died. The major problem was that his powerful sword, Demon Sword Altian, was also lost in those ruins. That sword was the symbol of House Altian, passed down for generations, and even after 50 years, efforts to get it back continued, as seen by the group approaching, which included the main character. The leader of the knight group was identified as Stefan von Lepanto Altian. The main character, watching from afar, thought Stefan must be Claude's grandson and then listened as a woman praised Stefan's elegance even when not on a horse. The main character noted the presence of a Slayer elf next to Stefan, observing they seemed to be having fun, while he himself felt a bit left out. He also noticed there was a young-looking priest in the night party and wondered if he could actually cast proper holy spells. More importantly to him, he still couldn't believe that the priest was a man. The main character decided he needed to find an excuse to talk to Todd, as the other two were chatting too much, and it was also nice to see Todd again. He observed Todd and the red-haired woman talking very closely, recalling how Todd used to talk to him similarly when he was a young wizard. But something felt strange now. He paused, suspecting something about Todd, but then quickly dismissed the thought, remembering Todd was a nice guy. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman looked confused as Todd leaned in close with a slightly creepy smile. The main character told himself that Todd was a nice guy and there was no way, as he gave a thumbs up to Ted, who was now impressed by the traveler's willingness to guide them. Ted asked if the traveler meant choosing him as a guide, and the traveler replied it wasn't a big deal. He explained that all the villagers were too scared to volunteer, which he thought was natural. The knight accompanying the traveler dismissed the villagers' fear, saying they would be with the bravest knights in the kingdom, which made the traveler internally annoyed at the knight's arrogance, thinking all knights were narcissistic jerks. Suddenly, a loud screeching sound startled both the traveler and his guide. A fast whoosh sound followed as the knights took their positions for a fight against some unseen enemies rushing from the trees. Monstrous, hairy creatures began descending from the sky, surrounded by purple energy. The strange, winged beasts swooped down closer. One massive monster with glowing eyes roared as it dove toward them. Several smaller, vicious-looking winged creatures followed the larger one. Stefan shouted for everyone to take their position as the creatures attacked, with a huge monster bearing down on the viewer. A creature let out a terrible shriek as it clawed its way toward the group. Rulsea, an elf, bravely called out the filthy creatures for targeting humans and declared they were blessed by Sayer. Stefan called for the Altian knights to repel the enemy, while the red-haired priest cast a spell. The wizard Todd shouted Fire Chain and began channeling a powerful orange fire spell. The fire spell erupted with a massive womb, engulfing the attacking monsters. Priestess, Silan, chanted a prayer to the great Philanus to bless the knights with unyielding courage. A bright flash of pink light enveloped the knights as Silan finished her spell. The main character observed that the knights were better than he thought, noting Stefan's swordsmanship was better than expected. But from a wizard's point of view, he still thought all the fighters looked sloppy. He concluded it was no wonder Master Gerard took pride in Gem Unbreakable, then started to think about something else. The scene shifted to show some orc-like creatures brutally fighting amongst themselves. According to Todd's story, this was the place where their guide died. A fierce-looking monster attacked with speed, showing its sharp teeth. The leader of this group, Stefan from the Altian family, was ready for the fight. The battle was chaotic, with monsters screeching and the knights crying out for help as they were attacked. One of the injured people thought that Stefan wasn't really a bad person, even though he didn't care much about others. This person thought that Stefan's nature meant he was probably just a bad person, which was why their guide had died. Meanwhile, someone shouted at another person to hide behind a tree because it was too dangerous there. Seeing Stefan in action, another person thought he seemed like the only decent one in the whole group, As the fight continued, a large bird-like creature swooshed down fast. The guide, who was fighting, realized that these attacks didn't even hurt him much. However, one of the monsters managed to pierce his eye, causing him to scream in pain. With a powerful blow, the guide knocked the attacking monster away, wondering if he still had some of his old training toughness left. Stefan then asked for a damage report and check if the wizard and priest were safe, and someone confirmed they were fine, my lord. One of the injured knights complained, asking Stefan if he cared about their safety at all, but Stefan loudly declared that the Altian order was strong. Stefan then told his cheering troops to enjoy the victory while they rested. The knights cheered loudly for their leader as they celebrated the win. After the fight, the guide saw the perfect moment to talk to the wizard and thanked him for saving his life. The wizard replied that it was just what he does, and then mentioned he overheard the guide was a wizard from the Delphia Magic Tower. The wizard then asked the guide if he knew his friend, a wizard named Leppenhart, who was also there. The guide recognized the name Leppenhart and confirmed he knew him. The guide then strangely described Leppenhart as a sweet and lovely boy, which made the guide react with shock. The guide quickly asked why the wizard was asking about Leppenhart, saying he just wanted to know how his friend was doing. The wizard confirmed that Leppenhart was still studying magic like always and nothing strange had happened in the past few years. The guide seemed very focused on Leppenhart's appearance, noting his sharp nose. The wizard continued, admiring Leppenhart's jewel-like eyes and smooth skin, concluding that he was interested in the physical body, but in a different way than Master Gerard. Guide suddenly panicked internally, wondering if he should beat up the wizard right there, but then corrected himself, saying he meant in terms of attitude. The wizard, confused, stated he wasn't sure about Leppenhart's thoughts or actions because he was never interested in them, and then asked the guide if he was hurt. The guide told the wizard he was fine and that he should check on the orcs instead, while the orcs themselves insisted they were okay and didn't need healing from Father Silnan. The wizard insisted they should let the orcs lick their wounds themselves. The female knight questioned why the priest would waste powers on those creatures, criticizing that he treated them kindly but like pets, not intelligent beings. The orcs sincerely thanked the priest for the healing, while the narrator thought that the biggest problem was people's fundamental values and securing rights for non-human races would be a long fight. Stefan impatiently called out to the guide, telling him to hurry up and guide them again. The guide gave directions, straight, then turned left towards a stream, telling them to slow down, but Stefan questioned his strange tone. The guide simply said it was nothing, and a few hours passed as the group traveled through the forest. The group had faced many monsters like basilisks, dire wolves, and over 20 ogres, which seemed unbelievable for a small mountain range. One soldier wondered why there were so many monsters, and the guide thought it was because they were going in a straight line, avoiding the right path, and told the weary soldiers they didn't need to rest. Stefan loudly commanded everyone to get on their feet, then complained that knights were arrogant, priests stubborn, and wizards narrow-minded and petty. He proudly stated that he was a wizard to the core. The guide internally justified his actions, saying he led them along the quickest route, so technically he didn't trick them, and he truly didn't mean to torment them. He then understood why Sir Claude died there, surprised by the monster density. Stefan looked shocked as he stared ahead at the sight that greeted them. Stefan exclaimed in excitement, asking if this was the place, pointing toward a structure in the distance. Guide confirmed it was the ancient ruins of Falton, Lord Stefan. The image showed a massive, dark, capsule-shaped structure with glowing blue lines overgrown with some greenery, sitting in a desolate, rocky area. The bright light around the ruins faded slightly, showing the structure under a bright sky. The group approached the imposing structure, which looked like a mix of ancient architecture and advanced technology. They stood before a giant, triangular entrance glowing with blue energy lines. The guide pointed toward the entrance, stating this was it, and confirmed it seemed safe to enter, my lord. Stefan excitedly told everyone to prepare themselves as they were about to enter. The guide offered to wait outside since his job was done, but Stefan questioned that, pointing out the guide had no way back to the village alone. Stefan agreed to protect the guide on the journey back, which made the guide internally question why Stefan didn't offer that in the first place, while Stefan looked pleased with himself. Stefan declared that a great knight rests beyond the gate and they shall honor his will. The knights cheered as Stefan shouted they must find the demon sword Altian. The guide wished them good luck, but Stefan roared and charged the others forward with a cry to charge, brave knights of Altian. The guide stayed behind as the knights rushed into the glowing gate entrance. Now alone, the guide thought it was time to do what he came for, reflecting that the ancient ruins of Felton, now full of undead, was once just an ordinary military outpost from the Silver Age. He noted that even though it was ordinary then, the Silver Age technology was ingenious compared to today's standards, making it very valuable. The guide stepping inside felt it had been so long, remembering exploring this place with Cirrus in his past life and calling those good times, as he approached a set of glowing runes. Inside the ruins, Lord Lepenhark heard a sylph whispering and realized it must be a secret gate complimenting the sylph, Cirrus, calling her his muse. Cirrus blushed at the compliment as she appeared in a bright light, and Lepenhardt said he would give her a kiss as a reward. The guide in the present snapped out of his memory flash, wondering why he thought about doing that with Cirrus in a danger zone. Realizing he had some guts back then, he focused on the glowing runes, recalling that it was a code based on the Libra, mixed with Aqua and Terra symbols in reverse order. He knew how to solve the code, but with his limited magic power, it was harder than he expected, noting that even with his strong body, his brain wasn't what it used to be. With a sudden surge of purple energy, the guide managed to activate something with clunks and clacks. He then decided he better take off his expensive code first, carefully placing it down, as he was not going to ruin something that cost 10 silver coins. Now bare-chested, the guide prepared himself, saying it was time to see what his current body could do. The guide seemed to be in pain or surprised by a sudden physical reaction, letting out a loud scream. He continued to react with pain and surprise, exclaiming various sounds of distress. The priestess, Silan, was using the healing light of Philinance to help the injured man. The man thanked Father Silan and replied that he needed him to live so she wouldn't die down there. Someone expressed shock that the floor suddenly sank, saying they almost died. They thanked Wizard Todd because his magic saved them from the fall, but he warned that it might not save them from other dangers ahead. The group started moving forward through the ruined, dark structure, heading deeper into whatever dungeon they were in. As the knights marched on, they suddenly heard a loud blast and saw one of their own thrown back. The sound of impact was followed by the sudden appearance of a giant, demonic monster at the top of the stairs, shocking the soldiers who screamed that it was a monster. A massive, multi-armed demon with horns loomed over the remaining knights, causing one to exclaim in fear, "Oh dear heavens!" One panicked soldier yelled to run, as the monster seemed overwhelmingly powerful. Silan quickly channeled immense energy, calling upon O great Philinance, smite that evil creature with your mace of light. The air crackled with power as Silan focused her magic, her expression intense. The energy then seemed to focus into a massive, glowing weapon of light forming around the staff. As the spell manifested, there were cynical thoughts from someone observing, "Are they cowering? How pathetic, and ugh, what a waste of muscles." Silan, with burning eyes, called out again to O great Philinance, and asked to bless them with a ton of unyielding courage. The knights were bathed in a powerful, pinkish light, causing them to scream in reaction to the sudden influx of energy. Wizard Todd looked on, wondering just how much holy power Silan poured into them to turn them into berserkers, noting they seemed almost possessed. The newly energized knights of House Alton shouted their battle cry, preparing to fight the vile creature. The mighty demon, wielding two massive swords, prepared to strike the charging soldiers. Wizard Todd watched the action, chanting an incantation that started with the words Saphiro de Crodal, and called upon Great Earth. Todd summoned what looked like iron swords from the ground, which slammed against the monster's attacks with a metallic clank and clink. A knight, seemingly Rilsea, then made a precise cut against the monster's arm with a slash. Another knight followed up with a powerful blow that landed with a loud wham, followed by a shower of sparks and debris. The knight who delivered the blow seemed to be struck back forcefully, landing hard on the stone floor with a thud. The elf-like knight, Rilsea, knelt beside the fallen knight, Stefan, checking if he was okay, saying, "I hope that helped Master Stefan." Stefan looked up, and someone else shouted, "Well done, Rilsea. Dude, you're truly a hero, Lord Stefan." Stefan gritted his teeth, muttering, "Damn these filthy monsters," and told everyone to stay focused, warning them this was where the mighty knight, Sir Claude, met his downfall. Suddenly, a massive fiery explosion erupted, pushing everyone back with a great whoosh and a loud boom as the structure crumbled. The gigantic, fiery monster roared as it unleashed its power, scattering the knights. One knight, wearing a red cape, flew through the air toward the monster amidst the chaos of fire and debris. Stefan, amidst the blaze, resolved himself, thinking, "I carry the name of House Altian, and am known as the Resolute Knight." He focused his energy for a final attack. He executed a shooting strike, channeling energy into his sword for a powerful downward thrust. The strike landed with a great wham on the monster, even as the creature roared. As Stefan swung, another figure, wearing a dark uniform and bandages, launched himself into the fray with a mighty punch surrounded by golden energy. The newcomer's fist connected, causing a massive wham sound. The red-haired priestess watched in shock as this new fighter seemed to effortlessly overpower the beast. The fighter landed with a resounding thud next to the downed Stefan. This newcomer, clearly a powerhouse, stared down at the monster, asking, "Is that all it took to kill this thing?" The remaining knights, including the priestess, looked on in stunned silence at the sheer power displayed. The man groaned as he started to wake up, clearly in pain from being knocked out. Someone was asking if the Lord was awake, as the surroundings showed a battlefield with defeated monsters and armored figures standing over the carnage. The man who just woke up asked what happened, looking confused at the strong, muscular fighter standing nearby. One of the knights gasped loudly, clearly shocked by the events that just unfolded. The knight exclaimed in surprise, realizing that the person who stepped in was a genuine fighter, while a very muscular man with red hair stood confidently. The knight, trying to be polite despite his shock, apologized for not recognizing the powerful man and asked for his name. The muscular man gave his name as Lepin, and then the knight remembered someone named Todd knew his younger self from the tower. Lepin's name was unfamiliar to the knight, who thought a true champion's name would be famous, while the knight with the red cape looked on. The man in armor then asked which noble family Lepin belonged to, but Lepin immediately said he was just a commoner. The knight was humiliated, thinking Lepin was just a nobody who took credit for what they almost handled, while Lepin responded that the fighter had skills and was helpful. Lepin questioned if the knight's memory was messed up because that was not what happened, adding that the knight seemed to have nothing strong about him. The muscular man suddenly slapped the knight, who reacted angrily, shouting back at him. The knight, identified as being from House Altian, demanded respect, but his companion told him to calm down, suggesting a vagrant wouldn't know etiquette, which the other knight agreed with since Lepin was a noble. The knight from House Altian then asked Lepin who taught him his skills. Lepin simply said he learned things from everywhere, flashing back to a memory of his master Gerard proudly talking about his new training technique and warning not to share it carelessly. Lepin pointed out that he was too strong for someone without proper training, and told the knights to stop interrogating him and check on their wounded soldiers instead. The man in the red cape observed that Lepin used a bossy tone, implying he didn't care about the wounded men lying around. The other knight noticed Lepin seemed unaware of how arrogant he sounded, suggesting this behavior came from someone used to ordering people around from a high position. They speculated that since Lepin ignored the age difference, he might be royalty from another country, which the older man agreed with, seeing it as how an older person speaks to a younger one. The man in the red cape found Lepin to be a very interesting man. A young girl with pink hair then asked Lepin his height, after confirming his name was Lepin. Lepin replied he was about 192 cm tall, and when asked his weight, he said he wasn't sure, as the girl looked at him with starry eyes, admiring him. The girl excitedly asked what kind of training needs out of body, and Lepin admitted that he got beat up a lot, ate a lot, and lifted a lot of weights, making the girl wonder why he was suddenly acting so friendly. The narration introduced the girl as Silen Philmarsis, and Silen explained that it was true that fighters never share their training secrets. The story then explained that Silen lost her parents young and was taken in by the Villingans Order's orphanage, where she was teased for being frail and pretty, perhaps making her desire what she lacked. Silen desired a strong body, a hearty laugh, and a deep voice, and even dreamed of becoming a monk to prove her faith through physical strength. But reality was different. She didn't grow taller, her voice didn't deepen, and her hair grew too fast, and despite trying to bulk up, all her muscle training did was increase her holy power from healing muscle pain, leading her to look up to rugged physiques. Silan admired how big and beautiful Lepin was, making him uncomfortable as he wondered why she was looking at him like that, leading him to say he was going to scout the exits. Silan excitedly insisted on going with him, worried about more injured soldiers being discovered if he went alone. The man in the red cape, Stefan, told Rilse to stay and help the others, and Lepin agreed to let Silan come with him, while Rilse quietly accepted the order. Stefan confirmed with Lepin that he was okay with the arrangement, and Lepin replied that it was fine, while Rilse confirmed she would obey Master Stefan. As Lepin and Stefan left, the knight from House Altian, who was just knocked out, began thinking to himself. The knight felt insulted that they got help from someone like Lepin and thought Lepin was overly proud for helping a knight. He believed Lepin volunteering to scout showed he had no respect for knights, calling him an arrogant bastard who deserved a lesson when they met another demon. The angry knight then imagined impressing Lord Stefan with his true capabilities after they met another demon, while Stefan knocked out the initially confused knight. The knight woke up briefly before Lepin delivered another blow. Lepin told the knight he was awake, but that those bastards hit him in the back of the head, knocking him out with one blow, and then Lepin told him to take a nap, knocking him out again. Stefan passed out 3 more times while Lepin hard ransacked the ruins, and as they returned, Stefan wondered if he was injured badly, but then thought he'd be fine since he was a rich noble. Stefan felt strange because he couldn't sense Lepin guarding, thinking maybe he was just weak and needed tonics later. Lepin said he had no room for more items and would have to come back later, as Stefan weakly agreed to head back now that the exits were secured. Lepin asked Stefan if he was from a royal family, which Stefan denied, saying he was just a commoner, leading Lepin to notice the way Stefan spoke as if everyone was beneath him. Lepin admitted that fighters needed confidence, so he understood treating Lord Stefan that way, but he shouldn't use the same tone with Sir Edward, who was over 40. Lepin realized he was only 22 and needed to be more careful with his etiquette, explaining he didn't meet many people and wasn't good with manners. The group then returned to a large stone door covered in vines, and Lepin asked what that was doing there, as he didn't remember seeing it in his past life. He realized that demon must be the guardian of the place, and it hadn't been defeated yet. Stefan expressed concern that with their current military strength, they might not win against this new threat. The knight from House Alcyon shouted to Lord Stefan, pointing out the sword the demon was holding. The knight explained in shock that the sword was the demon sword Alcyon. These ruins, broken in the dimensional rift from the Silver Age, have a system that fixes any problem they have, and this creature from another world got sucked into the defense system because of mistake. This meant that these creatures, called dungeon guardians, were living peacefully until they were suddenly taken and made to work without getting paid. When these beings join with the ruins system, they become super strong. What's more, this is the demon that killed Sir Claude, who was an aura wielder. If a dungeon guardian is stronger than Tagrel, then its power is going to be on a whole new level. Someone yelled out that the monster was tied up with chains. Another person shouted, asking if they were really scared of something that was already tied up. Then, someone else questioned if they were really going to fight that monster, saying they didn't stand a chance and would all die. One of the knights responded, saying they appreciated the help, but the other person was just a wanderer who didn't know honor. The knights declared that there are things in this world worth risking their lives for, and then told the others to stand their ground because they are the knights of House Alcyon, whose courage scares the demon. The first person watching saw the knights rush forward and thought to himself that they couldn't even beat Tagrel, so how would they kill this thing? Then, a priestess with pink hair called out to the priests of Philinus to grant them the goddess's blessing. The priestess shouted to the demon to be gone, and a bright light flashed. The demon was hit with a huge slash, making a loud sound as the chain shook. The result was one of the knights getting wounded, with blood spraying around. The observer said, "I told you so," as he watched more knights get thrown back by the monster's power. He looked on, saying, "Yup, here comes another one," as another knight flew towards him. He called the knights what a bunch of punching bags. The big monster let out a massive roar, smashing the ground as more knights were thrown away. The knights still tried to rally, shouting to hold their ground and show their bravery. The observer thought that he understood what kind of person Stefan was, and no matter how much he explained, Stefan wouldn't listen. However, he thought Sir Edward seemed more reasonable, so he might be able to talk some sense into him. He also noted that Stefan was somehow holding his own against Grelbeast, though he admitted Stefan was just throwing sneaky shots. Sir Edward then charged with a sword strike, trying to hit the monster. Meanwhile, the priestess was casting a powerful spell that made a big pink light. She yelled to the great Philinus to smite the evil creature with a mace of light. Power made a huge noise as it rushed toward the demon. The priestess continued her powerful call, shouting for 1,000 holy maces from Philinus. A massive explosion of light happened, and the priestess looked very stressed from using such power. The explosion hit the chained demon hard. The explosion made a big boom, and the demon looked like it was in pain. Then, the priestess Rolsia was seen leaping toward the monster with her sword raised. She jumped with a determined look, ready to strike. Rolsia brought her sword down with a sharp slice. The sword made a metallic sound as it hit something hard, with blood splattering. Sir Edward cheered, "Well done, Rolsia." The observer thought that Rolsia seemed skilled, even better than Sir Edward, making her probably the second strongest in that group. He then thought maybe he had underestimated these people a bit too much, as another person started chanting in a foreign language, calling for a blizzard storm. A huge swirling vortex of wind and snow formed with a whoosh, covering the area. The scene quickly shifted to a blue, glowing pattern on the ground, showing some kind of energy field. This was immediately replaced by an orange, glowing pattern with a loud vroom sound. A close-up on a glowing chain appeared, followed by a system warning that the current defense system was failing and initiating Phase 2. The chain demon let out a giant roar as the chains holding it shattered, and large crystal shards exploded outwards. The observer's face showed shock as he muttered, "Damn." The monstrous form below seemed to activate with glowing lines, and someone prepared to leap. The demon, now more enhanced with glowing red marks, leaped toward one of the armored figures. The demon's immense power pulsed around it with burning energy. The demon slammed down, and someone tried to slice it, making a slice sound. The demon roared as it swung wildly, catching the armored figures in a bloody mess. With a swish, the powerful knight named Stefan yelled out, "Die, Grellbeast." Stefan gathered his strength, his armor dented but his will unbroken. He landed a powerful kick with a hard thwack. This was followed by a spurt sound as Stefan took a hit or something similar. Sir Edward cried out for Lord Stefan. Stefan was thrown back with a loud crash, smashing through debris. Sir Edward rushed to check on Stefan, asking if he was all right. Stefan was hurt but moving, with Rosia quickly dashing in to help. Rosia performed a quick move, narrowly dodging an attack from the monster. Her sword struck the monster's arm or armor with loud metallic sounds like clang and clang. The sounds continued as the sword glanced off the hard surface. Rosia held her sword firmly, determined in the light of the setting or rising sun. The monster responded with a loud bam, and then its mouth glowed intensely. It unleashed a massive stream of fire with a sound blaze. The fire blast was huge, pushing everything back. The wave of fire rushed out with a powerful whoosh. The knights scattered as the fire exploded with a kaboom. Another large explosion followed with a boom. Rosia managed to avoid the worst of the blast, looking back at the destruction. Rosia's eyes widened in shock at the intensity of the monster's attack. Her gaze was locked on the fiery destruction as another loud sound, blast, echoed. The previously observing man, Stefan, jumped up, preparing his own attack as he shouted, "Leppen." He created a powerful gust of wind with a whoosh as he moved. His movement created a massive explosion with a kaboom. Stefan reached the injured Sir Edward and apologized, saying he was caught off guard and couldn't get to him faster. Stefan then turned to face the now fully powered-up demon with a firm stance. Stefan looked intently at the demon, wondering if he stood a chance against Grellbeast. He admitted he was curious about the real strength of his current power. He questioned if his body's martial skills could handle that demon now. He reflected that if he was still a wizard, he would avoid taking such risks with his life, as he clenched his fists. But now, as a fighter, he felt a thrill facing a strong opponent, something he never felt in his past life. Stefan smirked, realizing he had truly become a martial artist, believing his master would be proud. He remembered the teaching to throw the first punch in an uncertain situation and prepared his focused energy blast against the enraged demon.